Okay, well, this is my response to anti-feminist prax's 3 questions. Okay, number 1. Where do non-feminist people stand? Well, all over the place in regards to why they are and what they want. The only thing they all have in common is that they don't agree with what they consider to be feminism, to the point of not identifying with it, which just so happens to be the minority of the population. It varies from survey to survey, which just so happens to be between about 5 and 20% of the population identifying as feminists. So, 95 to 80% don't identify. Meanwhile, about 80 to 90% of society claim to support equality. Make of that what you will. I think the more relevant question is not why are most people not feminists. I think a more relevant question is why is a minority of people feminists, and why has this minority been so successful in reaching their political aims? That is the real question. Okay, so the second question. What is feminism? Well, to be fair, I could just call it cancer and be done with it, yet that doesn't truly explain what it is, now does it? I mean, it's all well and good to point out the actions of feminism for the last 200 years, but without any understanding of why, then we won't really get anywhere in truly understanding it. What feminism is, and always has been, is a female supremacist movement that has used fear, violence, and intimidation to reach its political ends. Feminism, much like communism, is an ideology founded on supremacy and terrorism, justified with Orwellian doublethink and a utopian vision never clearly defined of what they call equality. That spans from the very beginning right up to the present day. Why? Why has this always been the way it is? Now, there's a lot of theories on that. I'm just going to describe my one. I think feminism is purely politicised gynocentrism. Not to be confused with politicised gynocentrism, because almost everybody uses that. Even the communists and the Nazis did and still do. I mean, Marx must have knew the lives of the working class better than anyone, yet the narrative was still always the same. The lives of the women are always worse. And I don't think any of these women would have traded a day of work with their husbands. Working down coal mines, chopping down trees, working on roads, etc. The reason why people do that, just to frame things as the women's lives are always worse, is because it gets them votes. It's, that is basically it. It gets them votes. Getting the women are easier to get than the men, and if you get the women, you automatically get the men. No matter if you get the women, you automatically get the men. Or vice versa, that sort of works, but not to the extent. It's a tool. It's a political tool, because since we are innately gynocentric, it plays well with our instincts, and your emotional instincts is what good politicians play on. Well, feminism isn't using gynocentrism as a tool. It is gynocentrism, or should I say, it's the political party for gynocentrism. If gynocentrism was a political party, feminism is it. Now, gynocentrism, in short, is basically the instinct of always putting the safety and well-being of women first, no matter what. That instinct has been crafted by millions of years of evolution, so I very much doubt it is only a result of evolutionary psychology. Evolutionary biology must play a factor. It's ludicrous to say otherwise. And the reason why it has been crafted is because throughout human evolution, women are and always have been the limiting factor in reproduction. In a world where only 1 in 4 babies made it to adulthood from having unprotected immune systems, like no vaccinations and whatnot, and about 1% of women actually died in childbirth, to the long-term survival of the tribe, pretty much every uterus counts. Or every fertile one, anyway. That's why historically women have always had less freedoms, because both men and women have instinctively demanded that women have more protections, and the cost of more protections is less freedom. There is an intimate relationship between freedom and safety. That, the two are. That is how that works. Now, the reason why feminism was born was because our environment changed while our instincts remained the same. As far as our bodies are concerned, we're still living in the Stone Age. Changes happened from the birth of agriculture, but the real change happened from the birth of the Industrial Revolution. You can very easily predict which third world countries will adopt their own homegrown feminism naturally. Because consistently, throughout all of history, every nation adopted its own form of feminism about 30 years after it became industrialized. It's a very consistent pattern. If you open a Wikipedia page up, 2 Wikipedia pages up, one on the history of feminism, one on the Industrial Revolution, pay attention to the countries and the dates, and they all match up about only a few decades after the Industrial Revolution. What is feminism? Well, what it is, it's the result of our gynocentric instincts placed in a prosperous society, in a prosperous environment where there are no real dangers anymore. So we must make them up to protect women from something, anything. We must continue to protect and cater women, and that is why female supremacy is now called by a slightly different word. Equality. So, what is to be done? I mean, if that is where this comes from, that's the core, what can we do about that? Well, unless we're going to genetically engineer the population against their own instincts, I think that pretty much means we're stuck. Our best hope, if we want to stop this feminist bullshit and have a little bit more honesty and rationality in society, is we need to become at least a little bit more self-aware, just enough to understand what we're doing. It's not enough. It's not enough to argue against feminism. We need to red pill both men and women in society. We need to red pill them in regards to gynocentrism and just how deep it goes. Not just from a society point of view, but we need to do it a more personal point of view as well. Put them themselves, how they're part of it, and make them aware of that. It's not just enough to pay attention to our conscious thought process either. This is very deeply rooted in our subconscious. We definitely need to have a lot more criticism in regards to what are we actually doing. Now, how can we do that? We need to give people an alternative where they can express a form of gynocentrism that does not result in female supremacy. Now, the only thing I can really think of is to make people aware of that untamed. Well, the only way I can think that is even a possibility is to make people aware that this untamed gynocentrism, in an environment with no real predators. I mean, a saber-toothed tiger isn't going to come out and eat us, is it? This untamed gynocentrism just make people aware that, ironically, in this environment, is not helping women. It's actually hurting them. If we can't get rid of gynocentrism, then we have to work with it. Yet that can only work if we're being honest about it. In other words, successfully use gynocentrism to fight female supremacy by successfully arguing that is the result of untamed gynocentrism. And that will eventually kill feminism with time. And in order to do that, people are going to have to start successfully arguing why always putting women first in every single fucking situation is actually hurting them. I think hypergamy is a good example of that. We keep raising women up, but women's kind of expectations are raising with them, so there's less kind of suitable men in the market. And there's definitely there's all sorts of ones you can use, child custody, that sort of thing. But we have to make these arguments how always putting women first is not helping them. Otherwise, this will never end. You might kill feminism, but unless you kill it at the roots, that is the gynocentrism in this new environment that we have, it will just grow back under a new lovely different word with a lovely facelift. And yeah, that's basically my interpretation of what feminism is and what we can do with it, or do about it. Yeah, and deep down I kind of hope that I get proved wrong in regards to how badly this is. Cheers.